Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rationally Speaking with myself, Stuart Carrington, and Martin Turner. You know, we see REBT everywhere, and I think we want to share sort of like what we can gather from REBT and put it into kind of more accessible media as well. So hopefully that's one thing we're going to do today. Actually, I'm really excited about today because I'm a massive Karate Kid fan, and today this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about Karate Kid and Cobra Kai.
Nice. Two things that I'm not so familiar with. I know the old Karate Kid stuff, the first couple of movies maybe, but yeah, I don't know the other stuff. So this will be an education for me on two levels.
You're missing out. And I'm not on like Netflix commission or anything like that. But check out Cobra Kai. It's awesome.
Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll kind of share some slides. You can talk us through, and then we'll have a discussion as we go.
Cool.
Great. So hopefully everybody can see the slides and take us away, Stu.
Perfect. So as you'll see on ahead of you, we've got this character, one of the main characters in the original films, The Karate Kid. Now, not like the title character, who was played by Ralph Macchio. We're going to talk about his character in a moment. We're going to look at The Karate Kid from another perspective, which is where the spin-off show Cobra Kai kind of picks up. And this is on the character of Johnny Lawrence, who in the original film, you may remember, he kind of played the bully, if you like. And what we want to do is we want to explore this character who in the first film is very different to how we see him in Cobra Kai. And he has this wonderful arc, this wonderful like kind of redemption arc. And we're going to explore that character, but using an REBT perspective. So if we can move on, and here we go. We'll tell you a little bit about Johnny Lawrence. So this is Johnny Lawrence in the first film. So he's kind of like, in this scene, he actually gets sort of labelled a degenerate. And he kind of corrects his friends and says, like, I'm going to sort it out this time. I'm in my final year at school. I'm going to get my life and get my sort of like pieces together. I'm going to make it work. He wants to make something of himself. So we see in this character, this person that's sort of very much like kind of craving a little bit of respect. He's very much wanting to be a somebody. And he's very much wanting to show everyone that he's not worthless, that he can really achieve something. And he does that like with his friends, and he does that by kind of being like the all-star karate champion in the Valley in the original films. And consequently, he's seen or portrayed a little bit like a cocky bully, if you like. Now, what we find out in the later films is that he's kind of a little bit troubled. So his dad's not present. His mum's married a very kind of rich guy who's like, hence why he's got all the cool bikes and the cool gear and things like that. But his attitude at the moment is very much kind of this, I need attention and I want attention and I want to be seen as kind of like the top dog, if you like. And this isn't actually kind of helping him get what he wants, which is respect from other people. And in this very first scene, the introduction scene that we see him in The Karate Kid, is where he sees his old girlfriend, played by Elizabeth Shue, and she's talking to Ralph Macchio's character, Daniel LaRusso, and he doesn't like it. And he's kind of chatting to her, and she doesn't want to know him because she just sees him as a bully. And he can't get his head around that. He really wants this respect, and he kind of keeps talking about this, needs to be respected and listened to, and she doesn't want it. So I guess here, just want to get your thoughts, Martin, on this, like this notion of demands and this notion of like, I want something, and then how it can make us act in a way that means that we don't get it. And I guess that's the definition of irrational in this sense.
Yeah, well, it's that desperation, isn't it? It's that need, that must, that often leads to behaviours that actually make it less likely that we get the thing that we demand. Whereas, as we know with RBT, you're much more you're kind of better placed to desire those things, because those things might make sense for you as a person. It might make sense that you want to be accepted, you want the attention of others. That's a normal thing to desire. But when you go about it in a demanding way, it might lead to behaviours that make it less likely to happen. That kind of desperation comes through, and I think that's quite easy to happen when you really, really, really want something so intensely, it can kind of slip into a demand and can actually not help us. So it's kind of paradoxical. And as Stu there said, that's where the irrationality sometimes comes from there.
Like in this wonderful scene here, like he actually talks about this word like degenerate. Like I think one of his friends sort of jokingly sort of like uses this word in a couple of the episodes in Cobra Kai called Ex Degenerate and then one called Ace Degenerate. And you kind of have this image of this person that's saying, oh, I want to sort my life out. I'm going to make it work, I think is the exact quote. And then scenes later, he's getting into fights. He's doing drugs in school, not paying attention to kind of like lectures or skiving off classes and things like that. So like, I think that essence of what someone says isn't always a great window into what they actually believe.
Yeah, but I think that, the idea that your behaviour can kind of betray what you say you believe. And I think we've used that example before, haven't we, Stu? If I say to you, I believe the exit to this room is through the window, and then when I get up, I leave through the door. I've told you what I believe through my actions. Now, that obviously doesn't always work because people can, believe things and act in a completely different way for various social, political, all sorts of reasons to do that. But I think when we're working with people, that's some of the questioning that we're asking is, okay, you believe these things, but how are you acting? So is the person you're working with acting in a way that they find something completely intolerable and the end of the world, even though they might say, but that's not what's going through my head when I'm in that moment. Yes, but you're acting in that way. You're behaving in a way that this is the worst thing could possibly happen. This is completely intolerable, So I think that kind of transition between belief and behavior is quite an interesting one because not everybody has that insight into what they believe or can necessarily articulate what they believe. It might not be accessible to them, but what they believe sometimes bleeds through into their behavior, and that gives you a window into what the individual believes at a deep kind of tacit level that might not be easily explained or it might not be explicit. And that's why it's always surprising when you're working with people when you start to, with the client, reveal these things and the client start that self-discovery process of saying, actually, this is what I really deeply believe, and I've believed it for many years. I've just never articulated it in this way. And they're surprised that this has happened, but it makes sense to them. You can see that moment when it happens. In the literature, we sometimes call it like the light bulb moment. Like they go, oh, okay, that's what I've been doing. And that's really partly through behavior, understanding behavior, observing behavior, having them report behavior gives you that insight into the beliefs sometimes.
And what you've done there, Martin, is sort of like really identified this, like the mediating effect of beliefs. So beliefs will kind of directly influence our behaviors, but then likewise, it goes in the other direction. From our behaviors, we get an insight into what our beliefs are. And it's interesting that that's come up now because the next slide we're going to talk about where Johnny's beliefs may have been created or reinforced.
Well, also just to add to that, the behavior can obviously shape the belief as well. It's reciprocal. Take avoidance, for example. If my response to what I perceive to be threatening situations might be a social situation, I might be socially anxious and I'm going to a party or something, and I have the choice to avoid it, and I do take that choice and avoid it, my avoidance behavior then reinforces and builds upon my belief that being at a party, being nervous would be intolerable. I couldn't stand it and everybody would laugh at me and so that makes me an idiot. You avoiding actually strengthens that belief. So it's reciprocal, it's cyclical. And then because you believe it, it makes the next time you go into a situation like that a bit more difficult, which makes you more likely to avoid. And if you avoid it, then reinforces. So this reciprocal, cyclical relationships between beliefs and behaviors, I think is quite significant in the lives of human beings, but also obviously when we're working with people, that's the bits and pieces that you need to unpick to really understand what's going on and how to help somebody. And then also, as Ellis would do, sometimes fashion a behavioural intervention as sometimes a first port of call before you really get to the beliefs and start disputing irrationality and generating rational beliefs. Actually, we can structure behavioural interventions to move that along more quickly. In REBT, we have something called shame attacking. Maybe people have heard about exercises where individuals are encouraged to go out there and really, really put their ego on the line as a behavioural assignment. And they might have to sing on a street corner. They might have to walk a banana on a string through the mall or something. To put yourself in a situation to behaviourally challenge yourself, to break that cycle of avoidance, and then we circle back to the belief. So because of that behaviour belief link, it means those behavioural assignments can be quite powerful and quite immediate, actually.
So we've got beliefs, behaviours, emotional consequences, but they're all interdependent, and they can work both ways and reinforce each other.
100%.
Okay. So let's have a look at maybe where Johnny's beliefs have been reinforced or kind of originated from, and here's the significant other, and in Johnny's life, and throughout the film, but I have to say more so in the Cobra Kai series, the kind of father figure in Johnny's life is his sensei, John Kreese here. So Vietnam vet John Kreese, who embodies Cobra Kai's motto of strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And this is a kind of theme that it sort of just permeates through the whole films and all these series. And John Kreese is very much an individual that kind of embodies those values. He believes that kind of showing any type of weakness is wrong. And that one should never show any type of weakness or compassion or mercy. He believes that violence is the answer to most problems. And he believes that you should and have to not show fear, not show pain, and not show mercy. So we have these demands that he even reinforces in a drill in the dojo of his students when he says, it must not exist in this dojo. Does it? And then everyone shouts no, and so on and so forth. So here we've got this kind of socialization of beliefs. And I was wondering if you could share with us some of the research around how irrational beliefs are socialized in individuals.
Yeah, so this was something that I think Ellis was kind of cognizant of, the idea that beliefs could be shaped by the society that you're in and the culture that you're in. And because of that, it means we can help people and socialize them out of irrationality through education, through our surroundings. And this has kind of led to a piece of work that somebody called Ryan Bailey is leading. Ryan Bailey's a full-time psychologist, just coming to the end of his PhD with me. This idea of irrational climates. So yes, you have your own individual personal beliefs, but they don't form in a vacuum. They form on the basis of your parenting, school, upbringing, the environment that you're surrounded by. Within sport, we have this idea of climates, kind of the performance environment that you're in, and that can sort of deeply shape what we think, the rules that we create about our sporting environment. Now, if as an impressionable, a young athlete, the coaches that you come across, your teammates, the organisations that you're involved in, and your parents are endorsing of irrationality, so must win, must not show fear. If you show fear, you're weak. Failure is intolerable. Making a mistake is the end of the world. If they are endorsing of those, then what you do is you pick up those signals. You pick up the signals from the climate, and you start to internalize those as rules or beliefs, as these kind of tacit ideas. And those rules or beliefs help guide, how you interact with the sporting environment. And also, once those beliefs are in place, you're probably more likely to spot those signals because they kind of align with what you also believe. So you get a bit of confirmation bias there too, or attentional bias towards the things that align with your own personal beliefs. So having somebody who's a father figure, as you've said, becomes extremely important, both positively and negatively, because as you can imagine, if you have a significant other, teammates, parents, organisation, which is, say, rational or giving off rational signals that, yes, we want to succeed, but it's not the end of the world to fail and we can tolerate it and move on and learn. When you fail, it just shows that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It doesn't mean you're a complete failure. If the environment, the climate has those signals, then the individual within that climate, the young athlete, quite typically, because they are more open to taking on these ideas, they'll develop more rational ideas about their sport, about their performance, and therefore, protect their well-being and approach sport appropriately rather than inappropriately with all this, kind of irrational pressure. So, people are leading this work into these areas, and it provides us with an opportunity to work with people within those organisations to help to shape that climate from an REBT lens in more of a rational way, as opposed to an irrational way.
Now, I want to ask you a question here, Martin. I want to kind of sow the seed for something that we're going to discuss in a little bit, because I have a slide to kind of address this a little bit more. But perhaps what someone that's listening to this might be thinking is, okay, well, like in this situation, like Johnny is a 2-time champion, and he's like the best fighter in the dojo. He's doing really well. And Kreese himself in the films and in Cobra Kai is talking about how he's like the best fighter he's ever had. And he's instilling these values that like first place is everything. If you don't win, you're a loser. You mustn't show fear, mustn't show pain, all these things. What might you say if someone's saying, well, it's working? Like, this is a good thing because look at the benefits that this guy's reaping from the coach's teachings.
Well, I think that benefits when you're working with somebody and we're applying REBT, we have to think about function as something that is for the human being, not just for the role or the context. So it's helping me to win fights, okay? But what is it taking away from you as a person? Because we know that this character socially isn't so great. He's become a bully. He's not attracting the people that he wants to attract. So he's paying the price for some of these beliefs and behaviours. And we have to do an analysis of whether it's worth it. What price are you paying for success in this context? And becoming this person, can you constrain it to the context, or is it affecting your entire identity? At which point it gets precarious and dangerous, So I think that to somebody who says, yes, but this is working, it's helping me win. But it's like, okay, well, what's the cost, and is the cost worth it? Is that price worth paying your entire identity?
And that price is something that Johnny pays tenfold later on, and we're going to reveal that as we move on. But here we've spoken about perhaps kind of the sort of the negative socialization. And if we move on to the next slide, what we're going to see is perhaps some sort of what we call positive sort of socialization.
Well, just before we move on, just thinking as you were speaking there, the idea of a significant other in film, in media and literature is often a reflection of ourselves. So all of us have got this kind of sensei part of our minds, which is very rule-based, very rigid, very dogmatic, can be very negative, and you can use that to help you with things, and it's a part of all of us, and in some ways we have to utilize it and integrate it into who we are. So that's part of us all, and we have to figure out what to do with that. How do we exercise it? How do we use it? How do we stop it from taking over and really driving our behaviours? We've got to mediate that. We have to mediate that side of us. So I think we often see that in films. We have a specific character that plays a specific role that is driving some of that dogma, some of that rigidity. But really, the metaphor is, well, that's you. That's inside of us all, and I think it's what makes these characters so powerful. Is we hate them on one hand, but we also relate to them on the other, because there's part of us that's like that.
Oh, you've just set up the next one perfectly, Martin. Let's talk about Daniel LaRusso.